Welcome back, City Builders. Kodiak the Kodiak here. And hold on to your hard hats because we're diving deep into the economic heart of City Skylines II. In this electrifying development diary, we're unraveling the intricate web of simulations, calculations, and the processes that keep our city pulsating with life. Prepare to be blown away as we dissect the dynamic world of taxes and government subsidies. But wait, there's more. Brace yourself as we unveil an all-new production tab that gives us an unprecedented amount of control and visual clarity over the city's output and its prosperity. From the bustling businesses to thriving neighborhood, the gears of progress are turning like never before. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date on all the new City Skylines 2 news. We're about to revolutionize our city's economies, and you won't want to miss a single thrilling detail. Let's make our metropolises thrive like never before. Okay, before we get started, if you've watched these past couple dev diaries, you might be like, man, these dev diaries are not looking good. They're not giving us new stuff. This game's falling off, man. Don't worry, this week, full of cool stuff. We learned so much behind the scenes about how these businesses, these agents actually process their decision making. So buckle up. There's a ton in economy and production. So let's get started.
They say money makes the world go round. It's as true in City Skylines 2 as it is in our world. Keep your city spinning by steering its economy on a course to prosperity. Your city's economic simulation is modeled on real-world economics. This introduces complexity and nuance to city building without making it complicated. The economic system is...
Okay, so we're diving into the economy panel quite a bit. Obviously, it's titled Economy. And we're looking here right now at New Dollarton. And I just want to make a couple points before we dive into this. Now, obviously, the YouTube bar is covering up a little bit of the bottom, but we are able to see the money that's actually coming into the city and the population. So the population is increasing right now. And the city is profitable by what looks to be a pretty substantial margin. We've looked at the budget panel before, so I'm not going to go too in-depth with it, but as we have previously seen, this is pretty much the entirety of the budget panel. It does look like they now actually show all four of the green colors. I know a lot of people, I made a comment about this last time, and a lot of people were like, well, duh, like there's only one of the thing. It was not what I was talking about. There's four colors here. There's four incomes, and last time we saw this, there was only two colors, unless my monitor's broken and I couldn't see the color differences. Now we can actually see all four colors and how much they're actually providing to the city and the actual breakdown of how that budget is. Now, expenses are obviously one color because there's only one thing coming in here taking money away, and that is your service upkeeps. So your monthly balance is plus 520,000. So there we go. That's our first little taste here.
in City Skylines 2 is actually engineered...
Now, we actually got a little bit of info on the right there, so let's try to go back and see if we can get a frame-by-frame look.
The economic system in City Skylines 2...
So right there, so let's do frame by frame here. I'm going to turn it, it feels like it's really loud. I'm going to turn it down. I hope it's going to be good in post. Let's see. So we have taxes, service fees. We get service trade. We don't get the government subsidy flash. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at service trade here. So service trade, surplus from city services can be traded to surrounding cities in exchange for additional income. For example, visitors can get cities' healthcare services, and vacancies in schools can get filled by students from other cities. So they'll literally bus the kids over or do any of the other stuff. Surplus freshwater and sewage treatment capacity as well as excess electricity are automatically sold to surrounding cities as long as there's proper utility connections have been built. Pipes for water and sewage, power lines for electricity. So it also says here we're not exporting water at all. It doesn't even look like New Dollarton has a connection for water because it's at a net zero. It's not importing, they're not exporting. But exported electricity, on the other hand, is at 100,000. So that's pretty good. That's where the entirety of the service trade is coming from. That's this little bar. So notice how when they hover over it, the bar actually widens out so you can see which bar it's talking about down here as well. So let's go a few more frames here and we get service fees. Now we have a huge bunch of fees here, so we actually get to learn about all of the fees that they're actually talking about. Our bar gets bigger. Fees are paid paid by households and companies in exchange for using various services such as education, healthcare, and utilities. Households and companies adjust their service usage based on how high their fees are. While lower fees increase the well-being of the city, they may not be enough to cover the service's operating costs entirely. This leaves the city to pay for the rest. So we are actually making an income on all of these. So parking fees, electricity fees, water fees. Electricity fees are very high. Education fees are the highest. Garbage fees, healthcare fees, and public transport fees. So just a little note at how these are, and you can turn all of these down or up depending on how you want to do your budget. So there was one more actually. I'm sorry. Thought there was only two for a second. We have taxes to do. Let's see here. Taxes, and that's the majority, are collected from households and companies. Residential taxes are based on monthly wages. Company taxes are based on monthly profits. So your residential taxes are based on how much income you're making. So it's basically income tax, and then it's the same with companies' profit tax. So low tax encourages new citizens to move into the city and increases companies' chance of becoming successful. Low taxes also help buildings level up faster, as more money is left over after the building upkeep expenses are paid. Now, if you played City Skylines 1, I hope that all of this information today will teach you one thing, and that the economy that City Skylines 1 had in terms of like, just set your taxes to 12%, let it go, that does not exist in this game. High taxes bring in more for the city, but can drive away citizens and can cut companies' profits. High taxes also make buildings level up slower since there is less cash left after paying for upkeep expenses. So we can see the taxes here. Residential tax is pretty high. Office tax is also pretty high. It seems like New Dollarton is a very office-focused city, which is what we've kind of seen so far. You know, that central island is almost all office buildings. So we also have industrial tax and commercial tax, if I didn't say that already. So pretty cool.
This too is actually engineered to help you grow your new city.
So here we go. We also have our taxation tab. It's the first time we've seen the taxation tab, and we do get to customize how we tax things. So if we want to significantly tax, and we'll see this in a few minutes, if we want to tax like specific commercial types or specific industrial types differently, we can do that using these drop-down carrots, which is really cool. But first, let's talk about residential. So before we go into that, we also have percents here, and they will say in the written portion what the percents are. I don't remember what they are off the top of my head, but if you guys stick around until the written portion of the dev diary, they do say specifically what the percents are for each type, which is very cool, the maximum and positive. And it does go in the negative, so you can give subsidies to specific types as well. So residential taxes are collected from citizens' monthly wages. Tax rates can be set individually based on the citizen's education level. So they're all based on the education level, not the actual zoning type. So it's not like you're taxing the row homes differently than the low-density housing. It's all based on education. Low taxes encourage citizens to move into the city. Lower taxes also help residential buildings level up faster since more money is left over after the upkeep expenses are paid. High taxes bring in more money to the city's treasury, but can drive away the citizens not willing to pay as much. Higher taxes also slow down residential building level ups as there's less money. You know, that's pretty. This is going to be a very common. These last two tabs I feel like are going to be very common themes. So let's keep going. And they flash over all of them. So let's go back. I wasn't sure if they flashed over all of them. They didn't go over offices, but we'll just read the first little bits here. So commercial taxes are collected from companies as monthly profits. Tax rate can be set individually based on the type of goods sold. Low taxes increase companies' chances to become financially successful. Lower taxes also help commercial buildings level up faster since more money is left over after upkeep expenses are paid. And then higher taxes bring in more money to the city's treasury. We can also go companies, blah, 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 blah. Let's go on to industrial next. All right, industrial taxes are collected on companies' monthly profits. Tax rates can be set individually based on different types of goods and manufactured sold, so it's based on the type of goods. Again, low taxes increase companies' chances of becoming successful, and then this is kind of just all the same stuff here. So,
and as it develops, to give you influence over the financial levers that generate wealth, you'll raise revenue by taxing the...
Okay. So here is a better breakdown of the screen. We do not get more information on the actual good type on the right-hand side, but we do get to actually see how this is all broken down. Now, if you want to look down here, now the population is different in the amount of people moving in and leaving, but there is still a profit in the city. I don't know if any of this is relevant. A lot of I'm sure there'll be a lot of people speculating that the 12% is still like what it is. in City Skylines 2 just because of screens like this, but I again, this has nothing. This looks default. You know what I mean? It looks like New Dollarton wasn't touched. Maybe the devs put it back to default. So I would take this with a grain of salt. But it does look like the city is profitable, still sitting at 12%. I just have no idea what the growth of the city looks like, I guess, at the end of the day. So depending on what you're trying to build in your city, if you're trying to build a city that doesn't have a lot of level up or higher education citizens, and maybe you want it lower or something, we have no idea how the balance is actually going to work. But right here we can see all the different production types. So we have convenience food, furniture, grain, and this look how far this scrolls down. We don't know if they have the office dropped down too to like increase the size of this part, but look at this. Look how many like resources that industry can produce. You have convenience food, furniture, grain, paper, timber, vegetables, vehicles, electronics, and in the written portion of the dev diary, they do talk about why citizens pick specific things and how it's determined whether or not they're going to go shopping for those specific things too. So make sure, again, you guys stick around for the written portion because again, they didn't disappoint this week. I'm so excited. All right, let's keep moving.
The sale of goods and services, energy production, the extraction of raw materials, tourism, and more. You'll also tax private incomes, as healthy economic activity will mean jobs for citizens.
They do say this later in the written portion, but I'll give you guys this now. So the reason, I know a lot of you are critical of the billboards, you hate them. I get that. On some of the buildings, they look terrible. On some of the buildings, I don't think they look that bad. And the reason that they're on every building is it shows you what it does. They basically confirm that it does show you if the building is occupied or not. And we'll see that in the dev diary. But it basically tells you this building is being used by somebody because there's a different billboard for when it's unoccupied. And so that way you can glance at your city, and if you see a large swath of your city with those blank billboards, you know that they're unoccupied without giving you a flashing symbol, because buildings will kind of go in and out of service unless they become abandoned. So that's why the billboards are there. There's a total utility for it, which is actually really interesting, and it tells you which company is occupying it. So CRI Moore is occupying this one. Cupine, I don't know how they're pronouncing that. Capping. That's here. That's occupying this building as well. So,
with money in your city's coffers, you can invest in city services and infrastructure, schools and universities, and all the other engines of urban.
That football field looks really nice. Let's look at that again. Yeah, man, I really like these stadium assets.
Schools and universities, and all the other engines of urban development. An important aspect of economic growth is balancing supply and demand. Businesses will do this automatically, exporting their goods.
So right here's a semi-truck. It's talking about how it's moving stuff. It's moving furniture right here. And we're going to learn a lot about the type of goods and how they get transported, because furniture, stone, iron, weight is actually important in terms of transportation cost in this game, which is something that they'll talk about in the written portion of the diary in further detail, which is very interesting. I did not expect that level of depth in the simulation.
When they produce more than the market wants. However, this can hit their bottom line, as transport costs can reduce profitability.
So in the background, they're basically talking about like the different ways that we can earn or lose profit for our companies if they have to transport goods from a long ways away. Stuff that we've kind of already heard about in previous dev diaries. So if you haven't checked out my playlist, I suggest hitting the annotation up above if you haven't done so already, to check out the rest of my dev diaries where I break down all this stuff, because I don't want to go over too much stuff that we've already had on repeat unless it's really relevant. So just so you know, for the previous, they've already talked about how that kind of does that. One thing I want to point out is some of you in my comments have been pointing out that the white lines looked less aggressive in the past few dev diaries, which was kind of a plus for you. And now they're back to being very bright white, which kind of alludes maybe to the fact that there's different builds of the game being shown in these dev diaries and dev insights, because I think from the past couple, it seems like that it was like a different older build of the game than some of the other earlier dev diaries looked like they were even from a newer build of the game, Like these could have also been recorded back in like April, So I'm taking a lot of this stuff with a grain of salt here. So in terms of like the differences in like the line brightness or anything like that. So
to keep the rate of production in line with demand, businesses will even fire employees.
So right here we can see workplace availability, and it tells us some information about it. Now, What's interesting to me is that the uneducated and the open positions look like it's the same color. I'm assuming one's transparent and the other one's actually gray. I hope they change that color. I don't really like that. Maybe if this is like bright red or something. Well, I guess if you're colorblind, that might make educated and uneducated hard to tell the difference between. But it would be nice if they used a different color maybe for educated, or maybe like even, I don't know, black or white or something like that, just to kind of signify, rather than gray, which looks like transparent. I don't know. But anyways, we can see the differences. So we have uneducated workers here. We have poorly educated workers, well-educated, highly educated, and open positions. Now it's out of a specific number, and I don't really understand what that means, because you can't have like a maximum number of uneducated people in your city, right? Like that doesn't make any sense. So I don't really understand what this ratio is on. If you guys think you figured it out, let me know down in the comments below. I have no idea what this is. So
on the flip side, when products aren't made fast enough to meet local demand, companies in your city will be forced to buy from expensive outside connections. And that can quickly eat into profits too.
Right, which we've looked at before. There's a huge list here of resources that I will read off really quickly. So we have convenience food, beverages, food, electronics, petrochemicals, textiles, furniture, chemicals, plastics, and paper. And then top exports are financial, telecom, media, software, coal, machinery, and steel. They do talk about how office goods are exported in the written portion of the dev diary as well. So
taxes can also influence the production rate of specific goods. And slow the rate of production by raising taxes.
So they're going to scroll down, and we're going to be able to see more here. So we have metals and crude oil. So
lower taxes to accelerate production.
And now we have even more added. So we have metal, ore, petrochemicals, plastics, wood, and coal.
And more similar manufacturers to your city. It's also possible to motivate businesses to specialize in ways that strengthen the economy.
I am really appreciative of the fact that they made they're not like, all the logos aren't 10 out of 10 like bangers, but they look great. Like I'm very impressed with like how much detail they put into these like logos. Like I like this one especially. Like this one looks like maybe not on the yellow background. Maybe if this background was like white or something, this would look like a real logo. Like white with it, like this being black. Like I could see this being like a real logo on like a business somewhere here where I live. So I'm very impressed.
Ways that strengthen the economy. Imagine reducing taxes for furniture stores and the various industries.
So we actually saw a commercial right there, which is the first time they've shown the drop down of the commercial.
Reducing taxes.
Or the second time, I'm sorry. Oops, I exited out of it. Well, no, it's the first time. So this is where they're selling specific types of goods here, right? So we have convenience food being sold, food, furniture, lodging, meals, paper, vehicles, electronics, plastics, chemicals, pharmaceuticals. So commercial is going to be a smaller version of industrial, because the industries will be producing these products, right? But industries also produce products to make these products, right? Like certain types of like meals, I assume, uses food, right? So like food can be consumed by commercial or industrial to make then meals, and then sell both food and meals. So industrial is going to have a larger drop down, but I just figured I would look at this to see.
Stores and the various industries that manufacture their products. That will make them more profitable. More businesses specializing in the design and manufacture of furniture will crop up. Before you know it, your city will have a...
One thing I want to pause and look at here, and again, they're talking about stuff in the background. I'm sorry if I'm glossing over it. There's a lot to break down here, and a lot of the stuff that they're actually talking about audibly is stuff that we kind of already know, that they kind of have already told us in other dev diaries. So a lot of it is just being shown. When they highlight these buildings, it actually highlights the window frames here, and it does not highlight it doesn't just highlight the edges of the buildings. It actually highlights like the actual frames themselves, which really makes that building feel more open. It feels more alive. It really feels like there's an inside to the building, which is really cool. I really like that.
A flourishing furniture trade and reputation.
Like right here, you can see it over here in the bottom left as well, where like it actually like looks like it's outlining the like inside of the building. Now, I don't think the inside of these buildings are actually rendered like this to the same capacity, because a lot of these interiors of these buildings look like carbon copy, like boop, boop, like they just like, oh, this is this. Okay, and then we just copy paste. But it's still really cool. It still looks good.
It keeps cash flowing in.
It's that other
Managing
level
and
of
adjusting production
immersion.
chains is another way you can influence your city's economy.
So that was them expanding out the size of a resource production thing, which these actually function way different than you expect them to, and way different than they did in City Skylines 1. So I'm really excited to talk about these in the written portion of the dev diary because they're completely different.
In City Skylines 2, this adds a whole new dimension to city building. There's
Resource
no need
extraction.
to micromanage.
Okay, so we actually just saw something
This
really
adds a
quickly.
whole new
Let's see if we can get to
dimension
it.
building.
Also, the traffic on this road is a little worrying, but we'll see. Okay, so down here, services. So we have roads, electricity, water, sewage, healthcare, death care, garbage management, education. Yep. We already kind of know all this, but we actually get to see how much money they're taking from us, right? How much they're actually taking from our budget. And it seems like there is a fee for landscaping. I have no idea what that's for. But we can see right here that healthcare and death care is our number one consumer of our city services in terms of budget, which, as I talked about in a previous dev diary, is actually a little unrealistic when a lot of times, I guess because healthcare, at least in America, is privatized. So maybe this is at least realistic, but let's manage it based on terms of garbage management and police administration. Police budgets are wild, man. Like, they take up so much of a city's budget, and it's significantly lower here in this game. Now, that's just an American thing. I'm guessing it's probably just an American thing, but I find this very interesting to look at and kind of break down between realism and how they've chosen to balance the game, at least, right? Because not everything they're going to do is going to balance the game in a realistic way, but I do find this really interesting to see that. Okay, healthcare and death care, top of the list in terms of how much it's draining from this city. And this city's profitable, by the way. Then garbage management is the next one down. Fire and rescue is the next one down. And then you have police and administration. Then you have education and research after that. Then police and administration, transportation. Let's see, we have water and sewage after that. Parks and recreation, roads. Roads actually don't take up as much as I thought they were going to be totally honest with you. Same with electricity. It's mostly just healthcare and death. I'm just blown away by how much healthcare and death care is, and how they've chosen to balance that for this game. Like, I know that realistically, like, healthcare it can be very expensive. So I'm surprised that they've chosen to kind of balance it in this game to, like, be so high. And this could maybe be New Dollarton specific, like maybe New Teeland, Biffa City, or Rectangaloo, Toady City are completely different. And we saw Hope last week, which was a new city, which I haven't seen yet. This has all been New Dollarton, so which I find really interesting that we haven't seen more of Biffa City, being that when they told Biffa to build a city, they wanted his city to be profitable. They told him specifically, just make a profitable city. But now we're in the economy tab, and they're really highlighting New Dollarton with all this stuff. So I find that interesting, which makes me wonder, like, how these were recorded, and yeah.
You don't need to micromanage every.
So right here, we are under the production tab, and we actually get to see a breakdown of how much goods are being produced, what the surplus is, what the deficit is. This is actually a really nice UI. It looks good. Really simple to be able to understand what's going on here. And it looks like this city is importing a lot of its resources. Pretty much all of its resources that aren't ore is basically, is being imported. They have a pretty significant surplus. And as we know from previous dev diaries, if you specialize in a resource, there's like an adjacency bonus where, like, all of those buildings next to one another that all kind of do the same thing get a little buff from one another, right? They are producing some lumber too.
Every detail if you don't want.
And over here, we can now actually see what the production flowcharts look like. So they give you little flowcharts when you hover over these, and we can look at different ones as well. But you can basically see, like, you can either import them or mine them. Importing costs money. Mining is just like the generic way to get it. Produces coal. Coal can then either get exported, put into processing, or be sent to electricity. And so we have metal ore here now, and that can be made for mining or importing, and then it can either go to production or export. So it's just a good way to be able to highlight over these resources and see what they're being used for, right? So you can process this into petroleum, you can process this into chemicals, or you can export it, right? I don't know if it shows us any other ones. Let's see, cotton, which can be made from agriculture or import. We can put it into processing for t-shirts or just export the raw materials. So cotton has to be done that way. We can use vegetable to produce what looks to be juice, drinks, or some kind, food. So let's see here now. Next, we're on to livestock, agriculture, obviously, and then we can produce what looks to be, I think that's convenience food, or textiles, because like leather clothing or some sort, right? Wood can be used for heating for people's homes, right? We can process it into, like, I don't know, wooden planks, I'm assuming. I don't know what the resource name is for that one. And then we can also export it. So that is all the ones it shows.
But if you love a puzzle...
Nope, actually it does show that last one. Hold up. Let's actually take a look. Okay, rock. Rock is the last one here, so we can process it into some kind of minerals of some kind. I have no idea what that symbol is. Stone bricks, export.
Puzzle, there's almost no limit.
And now there's also material goods. So these are things that are produced from the factories. So we can either import metals or we can make them by processing, which I believe is from the stone. Or no, that's the diamond. So when you process this thing right here, then you process it, right? It turns it into metals. And then you can either put that in processing into cars, because citizens have to buy cars, machinery, or what looks to be glass, or that can be exported.
How deep you...
There is so much here, guys. Like, I don't know if it's I'm gonna leave the rest to you guys. If you guys want to go through and look at all of the production flow charts here, I'm gonna leave it to you. But for the sake of the length of this video, I'm gonna leave the rest of this to you. So if you guys want to look at how the rest of these are.
Raw material extraction. You can get raw materials into the city by importing them or producing them locally. Opt for local production, and you'll need to establish a specialized industry area. There are 9 total. 4 are...
Okay, so here's all our specialized industries. They talk about them in Dev Diary. They talk about them over the voice right now. Your fertile land, wood, ore, oil. 4 of them are based on the fertile land being livestock, crops, all this stuff, right? Then you have wood, ore. She'll explain.
Farms where you can raise livestock or grow either grain, vegetables, or cotton. Forests produce timber, though how much depends on the age of the forest.
Which is interesting. So because trees have a life cycle, if you plant a tree, it's going to be planted as a younger sapling, right? And then it has to grow up. So if the forest is older, it produces more wood, I guess, which is actually pretty interesting. So you want to place these lumber areas in older forests. Now, I don't know if they've explained this or not. I am curious, like, when a tree reaches the end of its lifespan, it loses all of its leaves, right? And which we've seen before, and like especially the first Dev Diary. I wonder what that means after the tree like loses its leaves. Does it go back down to a sapling then, and then it just starts again, and then it just does that cycle over and over? Or do you actually have to, like, does there need to be some kind of reseeding process for these forests? Like, how do they naturally regrow, I guess?
You can extract ore, stone, or coal from underground deposits. And lastly, you can drill for oil. You'll manage all this activity via the economy panel. It puts your city's finances at a glance and allows you to...
I think we got to see government subsidies there. Let's see, hold up. Yep, government subsidies. The government automatically grants the city subsidies depending on its economic situation. A small city in an overall weak financial status with poor tax revenue and low service fees receives a fair amount of subsidies, while a larger city with good financial situation and high revenue stream receives only negligible to no subsidies. And they talk about this in the Dev Diary as well, that the earlier on you are in your city and the poorer you are, the more the government tries to give you like little boosts of money, right? A really good example of this is in real life here, at least here in America. Smaller towns eat up more of the tax revenue than larger cities do. So if you look at the urban core of like your downtown city, right? So for example, I live in Grand Rapids, right? Grand Rapids downtown produces significantly more tax revenue per square foot than anywhere else in the city. And if you go out to the country, to a smaller town, that town cannot produce nearly as much tax revenue to pay for things like the roads that are there and all that other stuff. It's an eater, it's a consumer of that tax revenue. And that would be an example of why the government subsidies are so important to those smaller communities. So when you're building your city in the start, it's really important that you have those government subsidies to help grow that.
It puts your city's finances at a glance and allows you to monitor and adjust production out.
So we have a pretty good description here of healthcare and death care budget. I don't know if we've gone over this yet because I don't know if these are different than what we actually get when we hover over the buildings and stuff like that. So I'll read the healthcare and deathcare one real quick. The service building affects the service budget affects the service buildings in efficiency. Efficiency affects citizens' recovery from illness and injuries. It also affects how many ambulances are currently in use, just like in City Skylines 1. The efficiency affects how many hearses are currently in use, as well as the processing speed of bodies at the crematorium. Again, just like City Skylines 1. Efficiency also has an effect on citywide effects of disease center, control center, and health research institute.
Outputs for various goods and materials with integrated tools and clear.
Now, this is the new loan tab. Again, I hope that you guys are understanding that there's just so much in this dev. They did not disappoint. So here we are back into loans. If you are short on money, you can take a loan to finance the city expansion of your city. In return, you will have to pay interest in every month until you repay the loan by moving the loan slider back to 0. Your borrowing limit will increase with every milestone. The closer you get to the limit, the higher the interest rate will be. The interest rate can be decreased by placing the city hall or central bank in your city, which we've seen before in the city services dev diary or dev insight. So right here we can see the total loan amount, interest rate, monthly cost. They go deep into this in the actual written portion of the dev diary, but essentially there's no 3 loans anymore. It's just one loan with slider. You adjust it as needed. If you want more money, you slide it to the right. If you want to pay your loan off faster, you move it to the left. Share of your city's monthly income spent on loan interest, 1.8%. Remaining surplus right here, interest rate. Your interest rate goes up as the more you slide it to the right. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Here displays the economy panel.
City's monthly expenses with city available income. Oh, okay. So if you slide it too far, they'll give you a warning. Whoa, hey, buddy, like you're only making. I don't even remember what it was per month because they use different metrics, which is hard to get kind of a grasp of. Like on a screen like this, I pointed this out before, is when they use different metrics, like, yeah, it would be a lot to have, or like the number might be too small down here, or like certain ones can't do by hour, right? Like it would make no sense to make this per hour, right? Or the number might be too small where like hour makes more sense to do than month because it would be 0.0000 something, right? But it would be nice if both numbers were shown maybe down here, like hours and month. Just so we can get like a quick glance at like something like this, so they don't have to give us that warning. Like I can just mentally kind of understand what it is. But anyways, so this gives you this warning: to avoid your budget from spiraling out of control, consider paying back some of all of your loan, increase taxes, or reduce the current amount of expenses. So loan interest is going above our city's income. So we do actually have this bar right here that does sell it. And they do give us the ways to be able to determine that even without them having this number down here. But again, this is just what I was getting at when I initially talked about this before. So still pretty interesting.
Is a user-friendly way to manage and grow.
So right here we have the different education levels and how they're being taxed.
Your economy. So if money.
And if you look here as well,
is a user-friendly.
This the percentage shown in residential just shows you the minimum and the maximum. So it's not the average of the two, right? That's going to get shown up here. It's the actual full range of. Whoa, I hit the arrow. It's actually the full range of like how you're taxing. So the lowest you're taxing is 16%. The highest you're taxing is 9%.
Way to manage and grow your economy. So if money really does make the world turn, how will you grow your city's economy so everyone in it can enjoy the ride?
Great. Amazing stuff. There's more there. Don't worry. There's more in the written portion. So let's head on over there. Before we move on to the written portion, I just want to let you guys know that about half of you, at least, usually on average, make it to the halfway point in the video, which is right about here. So I want to thank you guys for watching so far. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Almost 80% of you are not subscribed, but over half of you make it to this middle point in the video. So make sure you guys drop a subscription if you guys are enjoying the video. It helps out an absolute ton. And drop a like if you haven't done so already, if you like the content so far. And the YouTube algorithm was not very kind to my last build episode, so if you guys want to help support me and check that video out, you can do that up in the annotation somewhere up here, or check out my Twitch stream, which I stream on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and most Fridays every single week, so pop in to that. Anyways, we're going to dive back into the written portion. Okay, just a friendly reminder, I do go through before I read all the important stuff or stuff that wasn't covered in previous dev diaries, and I try to highlight them. Or if it's really important information that I feel like needs a reminder, I make sure that it's also highlighted. So it does seem like I highlighted a lot in the beginning, which I did, but it gets lighter. It gets lighter, don't worry. There's a lot of good stuff in this, though. A ton of good stuff. As City Skylines 2 has been built from the ground up and all of its core systems are redesigned, there was also a need to redesign the economy simulation. It governs how households use their money and households and their money and resource usage, business finding suitable locations in the city based on evaluation of profit, and available resources, connections, and workforce, as well as city services, functionality, and trade. There's a lot there. We wanted to create a deep and complex system without being too complicated for you to manage. The system is modeled after real-life economic models to tie more realism into the game, and it is designed to balance itself out in most cases to both support new players and newly founded cities in their first steps to becoming bustling metropolises. So if all of this seems like this is all way too much for me, it's over my head. From everything I've kind of heard from the people who've played the game, like Biffa or $2.20 or Toadies, that it's not as complicated as it looks. Like they're really going in depth in these dev diaries to show the advanced players all the cool stuff that they can do, but it seems like it does do a really good job balancing itself out for new players. So that's really good. It features financial aid in the form of government subsidies, which we talked about earlier, which helps the city budget by taking care of portions of the excess in the early game. Portions of the expenses in the early game. The subsidies also include unemployment benefits for private citizens to keep them on their feet, able to improve their lives and become contributing members of society, which is good. While the economic system is designed to support you in your city building vision, the government aid decreases as the city grows and becomes successful, allowing you to fully stretch your city management wings and fly, which is what I was talking about earlier with the government subsidies. They do give you more money in the beginning when you're poorer, when you're smaller, and then they give you less as it grows, which we kind of read through that whole budget panel. So guiding the city towards whatever your end goal is. I wanted to highlight that specifically because they made it seem very open-ended there, and that's something that they kind of have been talking a lot about in City Skylines 2, is like you developing the story of your city, making it how you want it to be, and not giving you like a fixed end game goal, which I don't really feel like they necessarily did in City Skylines 1, other than you just need to like get to Megalopolis, right? Like you just need a population limit. Okay, you have everything, have fun, right? And there were the milestone like buildings, right? Like the actual landmark buildings that you could build, but the unique ones. But you know, you didn't have to build them. You could build the city however the heck you wanted. So I'm glad to see that they emphasized that again. So the next tab here is the economic cycle, and I said each agent tracks the amount of money and resources they have. So each individual sim is tracking how much money and resources they have to spend. The agents have expenses and incomes that and try to balance them out by making decisions on what to buy and sell depending on their current situation. Households spend money on to buy resources and pay rent. Businesses buy resources and turn them into other resources, which they can then sell to other businesses or customers directly. Businesses also pay rent for their building, which is taken into account when they calculate their profit. Certain city services also consume resources, and these expenses are added into their monthly upkeep. And that's really important for commercial businesses. We've talked about this before in other dev diaries, but just as a refresher, there is a lot of stuff that goes into the back end of how businesses make profit in terms of transportation costs and a bunch of other stuff. So it's really important that their costs are lower, because the more profit that they're able to make, the easier it is for that building to level up, and leveling up increases land value, and then that increases, tax, all that good stuff. So taxes can be used to encourage or discourage different businesses in the city. So if you have you're like, man, I'm looking at this and I got way too many businesses making, I don't know, convenience store food, you could tax the crap out of it if you really wanted to, and it'll discourage them from continuing to be there, Subsidizing resources at the beginning of production chain also benefits companies at the end of the chain, as they get easy access to resources they can use in the manufacturing process. So basically, if you subsidize the actual production side of things, so the very, very, very bottom of the chain, right? That affects everything up the chain as well. So, which can increase profits because they're buying stuff for cheaper, and then they're able to make more for that profit, right? So, something to keep in mind. Rents, import payments, company profits, and player income are money sinks that remove money from the economic situation. This Our simulation, sorry. This it goes into detail on kind of how money is included and excluded from the actual simulation, which is important. To balance the money sinks, the simulation also features money sources in the form of paid rents and company profits, and the funds used by the player, which are distributed so that half of them go to the citizens based on their education level, and half of them are evenly distributed to commercial buildings, wealth. Other money sources are export income from businesses and city services, tourists, and aforementioned government subsidies for the city and individual citizens. So it's basically just explaining how businesses and consumers are able to get their money, how money leaves the simulation, how it gains the simulation, right? So like it can leave it by being paid to another city, right? And then it can be brought back in by importing goods. So it's not just like this closed ecosystem. It is an open ecosystem. Like your city is closed off, right? So there is money being circulated, and those citizens need certain aspects of that money to buy things, right? So there's a lot more that goes into money now than just I use money to get paid and then taxes come to me, right? Like those businesses actually have like a set amount of cash somewhere in its code, its information, right? And the city has a certain amount of cash sitting in its coffers, and you have to bring more money in order to do it, right? So like, for example, in theory, right? Like let's say there is like a building and it cost $100 million to build. Well, there might not be $100 million circulating around in your city that will ever go into your coffers. So you will need to bring money into your simulation in order to do that. That's pretty much what this is saying. Or at least how I understood it. If you understood it differently, let me know in the comments below, but that's how I'm understanding this. So companies with fewer employees are preferred over companies with only a few jobs, which ensures somewhat even distribution of workers. So if a company has less jobs or less employees and they want more employees, they have a higher demand for, or they will have a higher, preference for citizens to apply there basically and go to work there than ones that only have maybe like 2 or 3 openings, which I find pretty interesting. Households go shopping when the AI dictates that there's a lack of resources. So if a household determines there is not enough stuff to consume here, someone in the household needs to go shopping. That's pretty much what happens. It checks the household members and their product preferences and chooses a product based on the preference weights. So if it's there, how I assume this, how I'm taking this, is that if a household has 5 teenagers, 1 adult, and 1 senior, and we know that there's certain preferences based on age ranges, right? So for example, teenagers prefer things like video games. So we'll use video games as an example because that's a consumable you can make in this game. There's 5 teenagers. So the household, in theory, if I'm reading this right, could check all the people and be like, this household is mostly teenagers. The odds are that they're going to buy a video game product. So then it picks video game product to buy. And then once the product type has been selected, it picks one of the household members who then travels to a shop selling desired product. So it doesn't pick the person who travels for the household to get the product. It chooses the product based on the household and then picks somebody to go. So a senior citizen who has no interest in video games because they're pre-coded to not could go buy a video game for the household because that's how that works. And then once it's purchased, the product is transmitted to the household. So it's just automatically there, right? If the household can't pay for the rent or the upkeep of the apartment, they look for other apartments available that match with their ability to pay rent. So they'll move and go to a cheaper house if they need to. They also consider moving out of the city, even though it is given a lower probability than finding a home locally. If the household is very poor and unable to find a new apartment and lacks funds to leave the city, they become homeless. In this case, they can live in city parks until their living situation changes. So if your city does end up having a homeless crisis, they will end up moving to your city park. So I was kind of curious about that. Like, where do they go then? Do they just walk endlessly? Or do they just visit places and then they just never go home? Because honestly, that sounds better. Like, I'll just make sure all my citizens are home. Now, obviously they can't do that for too long, but I was like, well, why house them then? But it does seem like they go live in city parks basically, until the situation changes. I wonder if there is actually a visual indicator that shows that they're living there, like tents or something like that. I'm a little curious to see how they've done that. So next, we're going to go down here to industrial companies. Industrial companies prefer areas with low land value to maximize profits. However, different types of production require different amounts of space. So some heavy industry companies set up shop in larger buildings regardless of cost. So something to keep in mind there. New companies have a slightly higher preference for resources that are not used in the city yet. So they want stuff that's not being manufactured or like used yet. Like that's their preference, right? Like, so whatever one's the lowest. Either they are produced there but exported without further refining. So if you're exporting a lot of something that's being produced, right? So like, let's say you're exporting a lot of carrots, right? And not turning it into food, a food manufacturer is more likely to spawn, basically. Either they are produced there but exported without further refining, or they are only available from outside connections. And that's what's really important, is that like, oh, okay, well, nobody's making this resource, but like nobody's making the prerequisite resource in the city, but nobody's also making the consumable. I'm going to move in and then just import the goods. Like that's pretty much what it does. As the company profits increase, they're able to invest more in the building's upkeep alongside paying rent, which slowly increases the building's levels and surrounding land value. Company level and efficiency also affect the production rate. This means that the level and the efficiency of the company increase. They can produce more of the same amount, with the same amount of expenses, water and electricity usage. So as the building basically like level increases, they can make more with the same amount of water and power. So they don't increase power usage, they don't increase water usage, they just increase the amount that they're actually producing with said resources. So that's pretty interesting. Thus lowering the price of the product, prices of the produced units, which increases profit for them. If there is more demand for a product than the company makes, they scale up production and hire more workers, and then they do the inverse if there is less demand. So they'll fire people, basically. Some of the industrial buildings are warehouses that don't produce anything by themselves, but are part of the resource trading, which we've learned previously. When resources are bought from outside connections, they are transported to the warehouses where they are stored until further use. Warehouses attempt to stay stocked and balanced by moving resources around the city, evenly distributing among the warehouses. In addition to zoned warehouses, many of the cargo transportation buildings function as warehouses as well, which we know we know that as well, as these warehouses have special connections to the outside world. Their transportation costs differ from the usual truck traffic. Now, I find that very interesting. That they will try to balance throughout the city, not based on like, oh, there's a lot of businesses over here that produce this resource, let's store them over here. They try to balance it, which could be really bad for your traffic flow. And I really hope that there is a little bit more of an advanced management that we can do with these warehouses in terms of storage for the city, that we can actually maybe like guide it a little bit better if we want to get in depth, because they do give us the option to get in depth with a lot of this stuff. I hope they allow us to get in depth like with that. Cargo trains and ships have large capacities, which lower the price of even the heaviest resources, and air cargo carries resources to and from anywhere with very little difference in transportation costs. So, transportation costs is based on weight. Notice how they said heaviest resources, and we'll learn this later in the written portion here. But weight is important. And so bringing in those heavier resources by train is going to lead to less costs for the businesses if you have to import them. So keep that in mind. Unoccupied buildings have no signs to display until a company moves in. So let's actually click on this. Let's see if it'll open it up. Hold on. To do that. And this is your ad here. So this is what it looks like when a business is unoccupied. So as I've said before, these billboards represent the building that the business that occupies said building. So if a business does not occupy this, then that's how that is. And a lot of you were curious before as well, in the mixed use buildings, like, oh, can multiple businesses occupy different floors of the building? No, it's one business occupies the entirety of the building, which, that's, it's a little disappointing, I guess. I mean, I'll take my W's where I can with the mixed use buildings as is, but it would be nice if those commercial buildings could occupy multiple buildings. Then I could maybe see them adding that in an expansion later. So, but for the time being, that's not how, it doesn't seem like that's how that functions. I could be wrong, but that's not how it seems like it's functioning. But right here, we can see this is an unoccupied building. And there you go. That's what the ads look like. So let's get back into the written portion now. As we scroll down, and says, if a neighborhood doesn't have a grocery store and the customers have high transportation costs, time and money from pathfinding calculations to reach the closest grocery store, the simulation marks the neighborhood's close surroundings as a lucrative area for grocery stores to appear, obviously if you zone commercial, so that's pretty good. Often customers and workers come from the same areas, which means that the commercial companies thrive near residential areas in general. So you want to put your commercial areas in with your residential areas. I hope that they don't produce a crap ton of noise pollution like they did in City Skylines 1, because that would be very nice to be able to actually have some like really good mixed zoning, especially in high density areas as well. All right. As the sales increase, the individual products become cheaper. This affects the decision-making processes of citizens where they evaluate where to buy products they need, and this simulates the real world where cheaper products attract more customers. So if a business is selling a product for cheaper, they will go to said business to buy said product for cheaper. All right, so the next one is office companies. Office companies function much in the same way as industrial manufacturing companies, so offices do, which is why they were combined in City Skylines 1. Their production uses electronics or software as the input resources, and their products are immaterial goods, such as software, telecom, banking, and media. So there is material and immaterial goods. Offices produce immaterial good, which are not physical goods. While good transportation connections are beneficial for offices, they are not reliant on short transport. They are not as reliant on short transport distances, such their resources they require is lightweight and cheap for transport. The immaterial goods that they produce are sold wirelessly. So there is no transportation of goods out of offices to manufacturing companies or other office companies and customers, so they don't require physical access to their customers, and it doesn't weigh on their decision making when evaluating suitable locations for founding companies. Thus, it is more important to be close to residential areas where potential workforces live in order to cut down costs for transportation. Large office buildings can employ hundreds of employees. So that's really cool. I like that. That's pretty good. Let's go down to production here. The production chain is designed so that you do not have to micromanage it, but if you so wish, you can really delve into the intricacies of what makes up the whole system. So this was just another preface to say that, like, if you're not looking to dive deep into the advanced calculation side and the micromanagement side of City Skylines 2, you don't have to. It should balance itself, according to this. Starting from extraction, the raw materials, all the way up to specialized industries in the city, you can influence every step of the process. Having companies that produce the same resources gives the same specialization bonus, which is just a reminder, as companies' efficiency. So if they're around buildings that are the same type, they get an efficiency bonus. To create an extraction area, you will need to use the specialized industry area tool, which is active when you place a specialized industry hub in the building. This tool works similarly to the district tool covered in city services, letting you define the area by placing corner nodes. This is the same as district, basically. This is you just draw it out the same as districts, which we've seen them do in previous dev diaries. You can expand it to cover more land, but the area must be within range of the building itself, which will automatically harvest resources from the area. If the area is producing more resources than the city needs, then those will automatically be sold to outside connections. So basically, these resource collectors, right? So we saw them draw these areas out. The way that they actually function is you draw the area and it will automatically harvest that from that area. So it's really cool that they'll place there's a main building that you actually place, and then you draw the area around that main building, which again, we've seen this before in previous dev diaries. It is beneficial for the city when the resource production and consumptions are balanced. So this next paragraph is kind of explaining that your city wants to be balanced. It doesn't want to be exporting goods. Like, you would think that maybe I just want to be exporting all the time, right? You want to be producing and exporting. No, it wants to be balanced, and it'll explain why. Overproduction of resources is not beneficial for the city or the companies exporting, right? When there is a large surplus of resources, the companies will export that resource to outside connections. However, when companies have to sell to outside connections, they also pay for the transportation costs to get there. The more of the resources are transported, the larger the transportation cost will become, as it is required to be transported further and further away from the city, and these costs are deducted from the company's profit margin. So when you export them out, even if you're going by train, it is more costly than selling it in the city. So your businesses will not make as much money and they will not level up as efficiently. Offices function as manufacturing companies, but instead of producing material goods, they produce immaterial goods. We already read that. So resource production factors. To provide a small sneak peek behind the scenes of the simulations, we are going to talk about the resource prices and their weights. All of the resources have several factors which affect the simulation, and a couple of these are price, weight, and space. Now, this is where it gets really important because understanding how this actually works can help you make decisions in like how you actually can like get your micromanagement down to a T, right? So price. Naturally refers to the actual price of a unit of a resource. The price determines how many units of resource a household can buy when they restock their household resources. The price of the resource is constant, but the availability of the resource contributes to the transportation costs, which define the end point or the end profit margins for the company. Weight. Weight refers to the abstract physical weight of the resource, which affects the resource's transportation costs. Light resources like pharmaceuticals incur small transportation costs because they're light, while stone and steel are heavy and in turn incur high transportation costs. Heavy stuff should ideally be produced in the city to avoid high transportation costs, but if it needs to be transported, having a ship or train connection is a good way to reduce those costs. So if you want to import stuff, try to import the lighter materials like pharmaceuticals, for example, and not heavier stuff like stone. Space affects the profitability of the resource. Some resources require more space for manufacturing than others, and companies that manufacture resources that take up large amounts of space prefer to be located in areas where the land value is low, so the company can make the most profit because they'll have to pay higher taxes if they're taking up more space. Or rent. Example, a materials factory. The factory's expenses are mostly dictated by the cost of acquiring its input, stone, as stone is ubiquitous but rather heavy. The transportation costs are probably a large part of the cost, making the company more likely to locate near the stone quarry. Additionally, the factory is probably quite large, so it would try to pick a location where the land price is not very high. Another large cost comes from paying the wages of the relatively untrained workers in the factory uses. The factory also buys some water and a lot of electricity, the prices of which are set by the player. Lastly, the factory earns money by selling its products to either local electronics or chemical factories or exporting them out of the city. If it has to export, it will also have to pay the transportation costs and be less productive. Finally, the player will tax whatever profit is left, or may even subsidize minerals production if they want to have more of it produced in the city. So, every building has to do this. I just want to stress that every building has to do all of this. All of this is being calculated in every single building that is built. When we talk about Sims and like what their needs and wants are, all of that is being calculated. So there's a lot of complex processes in this, and I've seen some people complain that something about like their game not running well, and they have like the X graphics card or whatever. But this game is very CPU heavy. It's a CPU dense game. There's a lot of complex processes that are going on in the background in order to determine this stuff. And I feel very confident that the CPU is going to be the one that's going to be doing the most of the work in this game, much like it was in City Skylines 1, except for the fact that City Skylines 1 didn't fully optimize or utilize your CPU. So there's a lot going on here, and I am very curious to see how this game runs based on all of the stuff that they keep talking about. In City Skylines, the production chain is very simple with 4 types of raw materials which can be produced or can be processed and further turned into goods consumed by commercial buildings. For City Skylines 2, we wanted to add more depth by providing more specialized industry types, more production variations per resource, and more options to combine those resources into new products. Specialized industries are typically require natural resources to function: fertile land, forest, or oil. With the exception of livestock, farming, and stone quarrying, specialized industries areas which can be built on land without any natural resources. So according to that, there is a fertile land, but you don't need to build it on the fertile land, right? And it does look like the stone quarry you can just place wherever the heck you want, because there'll be stones in the dirt, I guess. So, of natural resources, oil and ore are finite resources in less and less resources being extracted, while fertile lands and forests replenish resources over time, but are vulnerable to pollution. I really hope that in City Skylines 2 we can have the unlimited ore and oil. That would be nice. I don't remember if they included that in the menus. I think they did. I think I saw that. If they didn't, I'm going to be really disappointed because I absolutely hate that. Obviously, it's realistic, but boy, do I hate it. City Skylines 2 features 9 different specialized industry areas. You can choose between 4 types of farming: livestock farming, requiring no natural resources. So livestock you can place wherever the heck you want. Obviously, maybe not near pollution, but while grain farming, vegetable farming, and cotton farming need to be suited on fertile land. Okay, there we go. I didn't remember that from when I read it the first time. Forestry naturally requires forests. Stone mining can be utilized anywhere on the map, but coal and ore mining both need ore deposits in the ground. Lastly, we have oil drilling, which can be extracted from oil underground. So coal and ore both use the ore areas, so they have to share it. So that's important. Specialized industries do not affect the industrial zone or industry zones demand, and the economy of the companies in the specialized industry areas function differently as they cannot go bankrupt. So this is really important. So those specialized industries that you place, they're essentially city services. They cannot go bankrupt. They're just there. They'll just they'll downscale and upscale depending on demand that is actually needed. So it's really important that you keep that in mind, that those will just permanently be there. They won't just go out of business. You place them, you build the area that you want, and they're just there. Specialized industry vehicles are not part of normal traffic. This is important as well. And they do not drive on roads, but they still travel on paths created by the simulation when the industry area is created. So they're talking about the tractors that will drive on the farm fields. At first, when I first read this, I thought they meant like, how the heck do these transport goods then? The main building still has cargo traffic, but inside these like zoned areas, these buildings still will be accessed by like farmer vehicles and stuff. There's just no service roads to connect them, and there's just like invisible paths basically. Once they have gathered enough, they drop the resources at the main building, which then produces the resource and sends them to other companies and further processes them as part of the chain. So there you go. Next, we're going to move on to the economy panel. Now, we covered the economy panel pretty in-depth, but there's still more to learn. Loans work a bit differently, which we talked about in City Skylines. Instead of taking on 3 loans, there is now only 1 loan available, but the loan is adjustable and can be paid back in or increased at will. You can take out a loan and determine its size by moving the slider right and left. The loan is finalized when you actually hit the accept button. With the same method, you can repay the already existing loan or increase its size to take out even more money. The loan size has a limit that increases on each milestone. The interest rate is based on the size of the loan, and the loan itself is automatically paid back monthly. You can also pay it back manually, either partially or entirely over your city's finances, allowing if your city's finances allow it. The loan interest rate can be reduced by building a city hall or central bank. So which we know from the city services dev diary and insight. Each zone type has its own overall tax down here, which can be adjusted on the sliders. On the top of that, you can adjust the taxes of individual groups by expanding the menu for specific zone types for the residential zones. You can adjust tax per education level for commercial, industrial, and office zones. You can adjust the tax rates for each of the different product types. Each tax can be set between minus 10%, so basically a stimulus or a subsidy, and 30%. So you can tax up to 30% or give a subsidy of up to 10%, the other direction, right? Setting negative tax is a great way to guide production of different resources, specialized city in certain fields. So from the services tab, you can adjust different city service budgets, right? So that's down here, which affects the service buildings, efficiency, and in turn, the quality of said services. The service budget can range anywhere from 50 to 150. It's the same as in Cities 1. For electricity and water sewage, you can also change the service fee, which affects the consumption of services, but also the company efficiency and happiness of the citizens. An important design aim of these is that they do not need to be constantly micromanaged. Again, If you don't want to micromanage it, you don't have to. But for the more experienced players, they can provide additional layers of complexity to the simulation. From the production tab, right here, which we went into, you can observe each material goods and immaterial goods for your city that they are producing. And from that, you can also observe whether your city's production of the resources is either a surplus or a deficit. Okay. You can highlight each resource to reveal additional information, which shows where the resource can be gained from and where it can be either sold or used. For example, wood can be produced from forestry or it can be imported. Wood is also used for heating and can be further sold to processing companies or exported via outside connections, which we kind of went into before. So that is it. Oh my goodness. This was the longest one we've done in a while. Wow. I mean, the past few have not been this long, so there's also a lot of reading, a lot of explaining. There's a lot. I mean, there was a lot to this one. Let me know what you guys think. Did this turn you guys back around on City Skylines 2? I was never like unsold. I just kind of expected these diaries to kind of die down now that the past few had been kind of like not that exciting, and then this one they just smacked us in the face with so much more information. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys haven't checked out my build series yet, I'd really appreciate it if you did that somewhere in the annotations right now. And if you guys haven't subscribed yet and you made it this far, make sure you subscribe, drop a like on the video if you liked it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, and I will see you guys all on Thursday for our new dev insight on this, which I'm sure will be chock full of information because this dev diary was chock full of information. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it, and I will catch you in the next one. Deuces.